I just wanted to give you a little bit of a disclaimer. I'm not sharing these books with you so you can get burdenized by the fact, or you get pressurized by the fact that you need to read more. That is not the purpose of this video. The only reason I'm sharing all these books so you can get recommendations, or so you can get to know what kind of books I got to read. And if you have read any of these books, you can also get to know my thoughts on it. So that is the only and sole purpose of this video.
Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. In this video, I'm going to share with you all the books that I managed to read in the month of November. I was bogged down with work and university stuff in this month, so I didn't really got the chance to read a lot of physical books, but I did manage to read a couple of volumes of the manga series I'm in the middle of, so I want to discuss those books in this video. There's one more thing that I want to share with you is that the manga series I read, I didn't read them front to back, like one after the other. What I did was I read a couple of books in between those volumes as well, but I'm going to discuss the manga series first and collectively. I'm going to discuss all the volumes together because in that way I can present my thoughts and feelings towards the manga series in a much more organized and collective way. And in that way, you can also understand what I'm trying to say. So this is the actual reading order of this month. So first I read Death Note Volume 4, and then I read Enola Holmes, Book 1 by Nancy Springer. Then I read Sisters by Lily Tuck. Then I read Death Note Volume 5, The Loved One by Evelyn Waugh, Death Note Volume 6 and 7, and finally I finished reading Norwegian Wood by Haruki Murakami. So let's discuss the manga series first. I'm going to collectively tell you all about the series. So we're going to start with Death Note series as a whole. So first of all, I've actually already read volume 1, 2, and 3 last year. So I didn't read those again this year. I was very well aware about the story, so I didn't have to go and revisit it again.
So the first volume I read in the series was Death Note Volume 4. And what I really liked about this volume is that they introduced a new character, Misa. I really liked her character because she played a vital role in the story. Instead of being just mm, the female love interest, she actually played a really big role in the story. She posed as the second Kira. So Light is the first Kira, and Misa is the second Kira in the story, which brought a lot of complexity and a major plot twist in the story. One of the things that I'm really curious about is whether Misa is aware that Light is just using her, because she has this power, which are called Shinigami eyes. She has Shinigami eyes, which allows her to see other people's name in and lifespan on top of their heads. So she doesn't really have to, you know, go out her way to find someone's name. She just have to look at a person and she'll get to know the name easily. So I wonder if she's aware about the fact that Light doesn't really care about her. And also I really loved that we get to see this cat and mouse game between L and Light. That is really fun. I don't know why I like it so much, but I enjoyed that a lot. Then I'm gonna collectively talk about volume 5 and 6 because there's this one certain thing that I really did not, uh, I would say, enjoyed that much. So one of the most shocking things that happened in the story is that they both end up losing their memory of all the things they did when they were both using the Death Note, and that forced L to put them out of their confinement. And so that was really shocking. That was a really shocking moment because I we weren't aware, the audience was not aware that this could happen apparently. However, majority of the events that took place in these volumes, volume 5 and 6, was the uncovering of the new Kira. So apparently, after Misa and Light lose their memory, there there appears a new Kira. So there's another person who happens to be the new Kira, and which leads us to Yatsuba Company arc, which I did not enjoy it at all. So Yatsuba Company is, well, it is a company, as you can tell from the name, and there are about these 7 or 8 people. I don't really remember, but they are all of these employees, these 7 or 8 employees. They have these secret meetings, which in those meetings they decide which one should die and who should be killed. And so one of them is Kira. Like one of those people in the company is Kira, and that arc, that Yotsuba company arc, was just so boring, to be completely frank. And then suddenly we're following new characters and new rules of the Death Note, which are also revealed. So it's just a bit confusing, not gonna lie. And I did not enjoy it that we were following new characters, because I was really enjoying when L and Light were the only one who were playing this cat and mouse game. But I do have to admit though, the ending of Volume 6 was really satisfactory. I was literally on the edge of my seat. It was really good. I really liked when one of the employee of the Yotsuba company got captured as Kira. I'm not gonna tell his name because that would be a really major spoiler. And as for Light, this guy is such a genius. He was even able to come to the conclusion that uh, Kira transported his powers to the new Kira, which is really hard to conclude if you ask me. Like, how do you know about that? And finally, I read volume 7, and in this volume, we see Light's total scheming abilities come to light. No pun intended. His whole plan worked so well that my gobs were smacked. The moment he regained his memories, I remember thinking that it's all over and a lot of people are gonna die after that. And that is what exactly happened. We see Elle dies in front of Light and all the police officers, and I literally thought that he was pretending, like it was all a pretense and he didn't really died, but it was a real deal. He died at that moment. But you know what happened at that moment when he died? He knew that Light was Kira, but he couldn't just prove it. He didn't had any evidence to prove that Light is Kira. But at that moment when he died, Light had this. Light was the one who was holding L, by the way. So Light saw, when sorry, this is just so confusing. Okay, when L saw Light's diabolical face, he knew that Light is Kira, and that was such a chilling moment because he was dying, but yet he was able to prove, at least to himself, that Light is Kira. And I felt so bad for Elle. I remember thinking that that is it. He died. How are they gonna survive without him? But yes, it was an intense scene. Then, of course, we were introduced to a couple of new characters, uh, Near and Mellow. I don't know where they came from, but they were introduced in the series. To be completely frank, I wasn't intrigued by these characters because I was enjoying the story more with just Elle, Light, Misa, and the police officers. So I'm a bit hesitant now to move to the next volume because in volume number 8 we see that a few years have passed and Light is now acting as both Elle and Kira. And then, of course, there is the whole kidnapping business with other countries trying to involve themselves and trying to get a hold of Death Note. So it is not only confusing but also quite boring if you ask me. But of course, I will go on with the series because I do want to know the ending. I want to know what happens to Light, what happens to all the other characters. Okay, we are done with the manga series, so now we can move forward with the books that I got to read in November. And first of all, we have Enola Holmes Book 1 by Nancy Springer. And this book is the first in the series. I think there's six books in the series, and this one is called The Case of the Missing Marcus. I read this book simply because of the film. I watched Enola Holmes 1 and 2, and they both are really good films, I have to admit. I really like movies and books that are set in a time period which is way far back, like it's not the period we're living in at the moment. And the films were really well done, I have to admit. So I decided to read the books as well because I was intrigued. I wanted to know if there are any similar to the film, or is the film similar to the books. So I picked up the first one, and I would say the story is quite different. Of course, the starting is similar. The mother disappears and Anola is left alone, and she is she finds out that her mother disappeared on her birthday. But in the books we see that she turned 14, so her mother disappeared on her 14th birthday. But in the film, Anola is 16 when her mother disappeared. And other than that, we also get to know about Tewksbury, which is the male love interest in the film. However, in the book, Tewksbury is only 12, so there is definitely no romance in the books, just to be clear. Because they're so young, I don't think there is anything in between them, which is a good thing because I did really enjoy it. One of the things that I want to mention is about Sherlock Holmes. So, if you don't know, Enola Holmes is actually Sherlock Holmes' younger sister. So, we were also introduced to Sherlock Holmes in this novel and in the film as well. So, in the film, we see the actor who's playing Sherlock Holmes is Henry Cavill, and we see that he's made to look this soft person. Like, he's not harsh or cold or depressed, because if you look into Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's uh, character design of Sherlock Holmes, he's described as being a cold person. He has really sharp and angular features. He's tall and lean, and also is really cold and sometimes can be harsh. He's also has this melancholic nature, which in the Enola Holmes book, it was similar to what Sir Arthur Conan Doyle was trying to go with the character. But in the film, it was totally different. So I did thought that point was lacking, but the books did a really good. No, no, I actually read just the first book, so I should be saying the book. The book did a really great job in portraying Sherlock Holmes' character as well. So the next book on this list is Sisters by Lily Tuck. This is a literary fiction, a contemporary novel, and the story follows our unnamed narrator as she is married to a guy who had a wife before her as well. So her husband was already married before that, and he and his first wife decided to split up because of some reasons I really cannot name them. And now the unnamed narrator is thinking about what kind of person that first wife was, and she feels like as if she's still there in the house despite the fact that she's moved out to a different place. The second wife, our unnamed narrator, still feels her presence, and she keeps on thinking what kind of person she was, how did she handle her current husband and her teenage kids, which now of course, lives with her husband, and she just keeps on thinking, and is definitely a bit more psychological story. Because of the writing style, we see that the story isn't technically coherent, and look how different the writing style is, and it is no way connected to each other. So it felt a bit difficult for me to really make sense of the story, because after each page we would suddenly be introduced to something entirely different if we compare it to the last page. So it was a bit incoherent, but I did enjoy the book, and it was a bit disturbing, like disgustingly disturbing in some sense, I suppose. But look at this one sentence, just one sentence on one page. It is a good book, but definitely not for everyone, I would say. It takes time to understand what is happening in the story. We're going to move forward with the next book on this list, and that is The Loved One by Evelyn Waugh. I've heard about this author because of his other book that is quite well known, Bright Heads Revisited. It and I definitely wanted to read that book first, but then I saw this other work by the same author and I knew I had to read it. So this is kind of like a satire, a black comedy, and so this is actually about this man called Dennis Barlow whose friend died, and then he had to go to this, it's like a funeral parlor, but it's very different because it's kind of like a very commercialized funeral parlor. It's almost as if they're making this like a fashion trend or something. The funeral parlor is called Whispering Glades, and it is so weird. I have to admit, it felt a bit bizarre to enter Whis- Whispering Glades because it felt like as if it's not a funeral parlor or a memorial park, as it says. It felt like as if they're trying to sell death. Weirdly enough, like they're trying to sell uh, a person's funeral. They have different deals, they have different coffins, different dresses, and of course the way you want uh, the corpse of the person to be dressed up. It is so weird. And in this book, the author Evelyn Waugh is making fun of the community, that how these people are basically trying to commercialize death and funeral as well. I did definitely enjoy the story a lot. I was definitely cracking up at some of the things in the book, and of course I was really bizarred out by the things that were happening in the book. And of course there's also a love triangle in between these two um, male characters, and there's one female character, and there's a love triangle. If you want, you can definitely read this book. I would say it's pretty entertaining, but the ending really was kind of sad if you ask me. I was quite sad by the ending, and the way the female character just, her demise was just kind of sad if you ask me. And finally, we're going to discuss the book that I made a reading vlog on, and that is Norwegian Wood by Haruki Murakami. This is a book that really made me want to smash my head against the wall. Yes, that's how I feel about this book. This book, at its core, is a literary fiction novel, and I'm not saying that it's bad. It's not bad, it's just that some of the things and some of the most questionable things done by the characters really just irks me so much. And of course, the writing style. I didn't enjoy Murakami's writing style, but but I just wish that he wouldn't add random smut scenes in the book. Yes, there were a lot. After every 10 to 20 pages, I would have to skip some of the passages, sometimes even a whole page of just smut. For no reason. It wasn't even supposed to be there. It just happened to be put in the story just randomly because Murakami wanted that to happen. I mean, what was the point of putting so many explicit scenes in the story? Because they didn't even added anything. And to me it to me it felt like as if the characters were just obsessed with all the, doing the diddly do. Please interpretate that yourself. But it just felt wrong. I love the story. I was really intrigued by Watanabe's character and I wanted to know how his story will go on, what he will do in his life. And although in one sense I did got to know how his life was. Not his whole life, but a couple of years I did got to know about that. But the random explicit scenes shouldn't be there in the story. And that really did destroy the story for me. And that is why I feel like this book was just okay. I have heard from several people that Norwegian Wood does contain a lot of explicit scenes, but I was not really expecting the amount of the enormous amount of them because I've read After Dark and The Strange Library, which are other two works by him, and there are hardly any explicit scenes in those books. So I just thought that would be the case with Norwegian Wood as well, but that wasn't the case, unfortunately. But I did enjoyed the life story of Watanabe, but I just wish that all the explicit content wouldn't be there in the book. Oh well, I've reached the end of the video, and I would like to thank you now for watching and hearing me ramble about books. Sometimes I have this ability to just yap for hours about books, and I feel like that I sometimes bore people out because of that, but I'm really happy that I got to do it. And sometimes I do feel like that it's hard for me to describe books. I tried my very best. I'm trying to get better at it, and hopefully in the future I get to do a much more better job as well. But I'm really happy that I got to share what I got to read in November. It was a great reading month, even though I didn't read that many physical books. But still, quality over quantity, that is the main goal. I'm not trying to read as many books as possible. I'm trying to read good books and enjoy them. And yeah, I'll see you in the next video.